Welcome viewers and listeners to this video from the Marxist Workers Party. My name's Sean Organiser. It's Tuesday 9th of June and we're joined by Solly Malema, who has agreed to give us an interview on the latest developments in the public sector and around the struggle of the CHWs, the community health workers, and the expanded public works programme workers, EPWP. But before we come to that, we just wanted to briefly ask you, Solly, on Nupsaw's latest announcement that you're supporting the Labour Court application of the Public Servants Association, PSA, against the ANC government's unilateral tearing up of the public sector wage agreement. Could you just give us a brief explanation and how you think the court case will go?
Thank you, Comrade Sean. What the government did is completely unacceptable by obviously undermining the collective bargaining processes. Because if we don't do anything about that, that will also affect the private sector. The employers in the private sector will obviously say if the government can renege from agreements, who are we not to? So it will impact, it will actually ravage everything, all the agreements, either in the public sector or in the private sector. So as the union, even during the lockdown, we issued a statement to say we will approach the Labour Court so that they enforce the agreement. There's no need to negotiate for that agreement in the first place. In 2018, we, for instance, we did not sign that agreement because we felt that COSATU unions sold out the workers. But now, with that a mere increase of 1% plus COLA, the government is not willing to implement that agreement, and we are worried that they cannot use the corona because they pronounced before even the issue of the corona. So we have joined the PSA because when we look at their affidavit, it's more like our affidavit, so that we thought there's no need for us to go in silo. Let's join the PSA because the facts are the same. And we believe that there's no court that will rule otherwise because there's an agreement in place. We believe that the court will enforce that wage agreement or PSCBC wage agreement, Resolution 1 of 2018. Thank you, Comrade Shaw.
Just one more question on that before we move on. You're optimistic that the court will support the union's case. But of course, when the next round of negotiations for public sector wages open for, I think it will be the 2022-25 period, the government will no doubt come back for blood from the workers if they're defeated in the courts this time and try and squeeze the pay of the workers again. The Marxist Workers Party has raised that we think a public sector general strike is unavoidable in the near future, whether that's this year or next year. What's your view on the future for public sector wages and the possibility of action?
It's true, Comrade Sean. The next wage negotiations in the public sector is not going to be easy, especially considering what the Minister of Finance has pronounced, the austerity measures that are imposed by the ANC government on the working class. So obviously, if they can manage to renege from an agreement, obviously the next coming wage negotiation is going to be tough, and we are expecting a rolling mass action in order to exert pressure to the government to give workers a living wage. without that power. But we are also praying that because we do not trust the COSATU unions. Yes, we are we are with them in the bargaining council. We're not sure if the history will happen again, like they sold out in 2018. But we are just praying that this time around, we hope they have learned that the ANC government cannot be trusted, and they will work with us so that we have an agreement that will make the working class, the workers in the public sector happy.
We'll move on then to the struggle and the issues facing the community health workers. Just for viewers that haven't followed the developments with the MWP before, over the last several months, Nupsaw, the Gauteng EPWP Workers Forum, and the MWP have been collaborating in a campaign for permanent jobs. Now, Nupsaw's been organising CHWs for a longer time, and of course the pandemic and the lockdown has created a whole new set of issues that are facing workers. Solly, would you be able to explain the background to the CHW, the issues that have developed during the pandemic, and how the union has been taking up the issues?
Thanks, Comrade Sean. The Department of Health relies more extensively on the community health workers to assist with the tracking, the tracing of potential COVID-19 cases. But the reality is that the government did not provide assurance about how it will protect the community health workers during the process and beyond. So, it is incontrovertible that without the CHWs and all healthcare workers, the battle against the novel coronavirus will just be a dream. So we've been long with the struggle as Nupsaw of the total liberation of the community health workers, way back, I think around 2010, somewhere around there. In April this year, the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 outlined the government's plan to increase the tracing and testing in communities as part of the aggressive strategy to cap the spread of the virus in the country. And the minister as well, Dr. Solly Malema, have also acknowledged the importance of expanding screening and testing where people live, focusing first on high density and high risk areas. So he indicated that the government will deploy more than 28,000 CHWs going house to house to vulnerable communities to screen and test people. And Comrade Sean, this phenomenon of reliance on CHWs to provide healthcare services is not new, in the same way that their intervention are central to the TB and the HIV response. CHWs are playing a critical role to South Africans' response to COVID-19. Part of this is because they are already embedded in communities and are able to assist in tracing those who are at risk of contracting the virus. They will also continue to be instrumental, Comrade Sean, in the tracing and monitoring even after the lockdown has ended. So I'm just trying to paint a picture that the nature of the job for CHWs is of the permanent nature. So their job is of permanent nature. I was trying to paint that picture. So the CHWs across the country stand ready to assist with the effort to ensure that the virus is contained, but they are deeply concerned about their safety. Nupsaw conducted a survey of CHWs in all provinces, which revealed worrying inconsistencies in information communicated regarding the training, availability of PPE for CHWs, and standard operating procedures across and between provinces. I want to now come to the non-negotiable, Comrade Sean, which is the proper PPE. CHWs are expected to conduct a house-to-house visit to assist with the tracing and therefore risk exposure as they may encounter infectious individuals. If they are exposed, there is also a risk of cross-contamination across households that they visit and their families. So, in ensuring that CHWs are equipped with the appropriate PPE and carefully trained on its optimal use, it is therefore critical to the Department of Health. As far as we are concerned, they have recommended the 2 masks for healthcare workers, which is a surgical mask and N95. Then there's an issue of sanitizer. There's issue of gloves, because some of the facility managers, because let me give an example in the Western Cape. CHWs are still outsourced to NGOs, and these NGOs are non-compliant in terms of the provision of a proper PPE. For instance, they will provide 1 mask to be used for the whole week. They will tell the CHWs to buy a cloth mask, which is not recommended for healthcare workers because the risk is too high. So those are the things. So that's why now we're raising the issue of standardization of operation and protocols across and within provinces, because provinces are not operating, they are operating in silo, and that puts other CHWs at risk. We as Nupsaw, we are worried that to date there is no standard protocols for the mobilization of CHWs and their training in relation to the task allocated to CHWs during the COVID-19 response. In one province, CHWs have been told to remain at home, for instance, not to conduct their ordinary work, while others, they are expected to report to the facilities and take directions from facility managers who have not been briefed. In other instances, CHWs are expected to assist with tracing people who may have been exposed to the virus without training and without protective gear. The health minister fails to issue a directive to provincial health departments with standardized protocols for operations in relation to CHWs. This should include CHWs not to enter homes without appropriate protective gear. CHWs should not be required to perform tasks that will expose them to danger. For instance, I've talked about Western Cape, but I want to emphasize it. The 8 provinces in the Republic of South Africa have absorbed the CHWs and they are paid through a PESAL system, except the Western Cape that is behaving like a federal state. In the Western Cape, for example, CHWs continue to be employed through non-governmental organizations, which is the NGOs. It is not clear what the procedures are for such CHWs to be mobilized for the COVID-19 response and what the role of the NGOs will be in this in this battle against the novel coronavirus. NGOs are non-compliant in relation to PPE. They provide 1 surgical mask to be used for a week. Some NGOs are telling CHWs to use a cloth mask. Nupsaw needs an urgent steps to be taken to ensure that all CHWs employed through the department, by the Department of Health, all CHWs must be afforded the same protection as public servants employed by the government. The minister, we're demanding that the minister must issue a directive to all health departments regarding the registration of community health workers for QUAIDA. The reality is that the work of the CHWs is stressful under normal circumstances. In the light of this pandemic it poses, They are currently under even more emotional, physical, and financial stress. It is thus also imperative that the CHWs are provided with psychosocial support, financial support during these trying times and beyond. As a crucial component of the healthcare system, and indeed to the COVID-19 response, CHWs must be paid 2,000 Rand in respect of COVID-19 danger allowance. Be absorbed to DPSA salary level 5 and have access to the same support and protection as is being provided to other healthcare providers. While these demands for the protection, training, and equipment of the CHWs is being made within the context of COVID-19 pandemic, it is also highlights pre-existing issues with the conditions under which the CHWs works. These include not having security of employment, as they are continuously hired on fixed-term contract and receive a mere stipend of 3,500 a month through a bargaining council agreement after years of Nupsaw fighting for a living wages and better working conditions. We fail to understand why community health workers are suffering like this, and why the ANC government is not doing anything about this. As Nupsaw, we will do something about this. We will fight for a total liberation of the community health workers, and you can be guaranteed that we will never retreat from the struggle of a total liberation of the community health workers.
Thanks, Solly. Well, you've painted a very clear picture of how the CHWs are really the essential workers of the essential workers, playing an absolutely vital role on the front line. And as you explained, they're not only risking their own health, but the health of their families when they return home. You've explained how the low wages, the role of the outsourced NGOs, and so on. Now, we understand that Nupsaw is preparing a program of action to further take forward the issues of the CHW workers. Are you able to give us a hint of what's planned in the coming weeks?
Thank you, Comrade Sean. Actually, tomorrow there will be a campaign in Eastern Cape as a build-up to a massive campaign in the country. This coming Saturday, there will also be another campaign at the National Department of Health. It's also a build-up. So we are expecting a massive campaign, a total shutdown on the 19th of June this year. And we understand that we are in a war against the novel coronavirus, but CHWs are doing essential services in order to try and cap the surge of the COVID-19. So they also deserve to be paid accordingly. They deserve to be paid like all healthcare workers in the Republic of South Africa. So the government cannot do this at their expenses. The government, in particular the CHWs in the Western Cape, where they are continuing with their neoliberal policies, and the Minister of Finance is completely failing to intervene. The stupid council, Public Health and Social Development Sectoral Bargaining Council, is failing to enforce Resolution 1 of 2018, so that CHWs in the Western Cape are also paid through a PESAL system. Limpopo also has partially complied with Resolution 1 of 2018. There are other sectors or categories of the CHWs that are still employed by the NGOs, and we are saying that is completely unacceptable. All CHWs must be placed on a PESAL system. When we signed that agreement of Resolution 1 of 2018, we said we want to standardize. We want all the community health workers to be on the same level with same conditions as a phase 1 of the battle against the exploitation. Now we are now fighting for phase 2, which is salary level 5 for all the community health workers. Remember, they were used to be called volunteers. In Limpopo, for instance, you'll find that CHWs are earning 1,200, Eastern Cape 3,000, Mpumalanga, and they're employed by outsourced to various NGOs. Now we have successfully managed to formalize the sector. There's a policy in place, but the war is not over because our demand is salary level 5. The issue of standardization has never been our demand, but it was just a process of realizing a demand of salary level 5.
I mean, I think Nupsaw's set a real example for the whole trade union movement of how to organise the unorganised, of how to bring informal workers into the union movement and fight for permanent jobs and better wages. Of course, the Marxist Workers Party, we stand in full solidarity with the programme of action, and where we can on the ground, we'll assist. Now, before we conclude the interview, just want us to briefly touch on the latest developments with the EPWP workers, who of course have been in an alliance with the CHWs, as they both face similar issues as part of the ANC government's slave labour scheme. EPWP workers in Gauteng are planning to take to the streets again, and I think it'll be important to make sure that the alliance between the EPWPs and the CHWs remains in force. But of course, under lockdown, it was very difficult for protests to operate. And as a backup to the campaign, we took the issues to the courts. Nupsaw helped the EPWP workers to take the issue to the courts. Can you just update us on the latest there?
Thank you, Comrade Sean. Yes, indeed, we approached the Labour Court on an urgent basis. Unfortunately, our matter was dismissed, but not on merits, but on the urgency. The judge indicated that there are avenues that we can follow for the CCMA before we approach the Labour Court. Two, that the dismissal has already happened. And when you deal with issues of unfair dismissal, there are processes. You either need to go to the council or to the CCMA. So we have already referred the matter to CCMA. We are waiting for a notice of set down so that we can then represent our members, our EPWP members there. And we are confident that we will emerge on this case. And we fully support the upcoming campaign at the Department of Infrastructure in Johannesburg. We are behind all the EPWPs in the country, because what the government is doing, they are no longer, for instance, filling up the vacant positions. But what they are doing, they are exploiting workers in the name of EPWP. How can one be an EPWP worker for a period of 10 years or more? That is a clear exploitation. That is the agenda of the ANC neoliberal policies. So they no longer want to fill up the vacant posts. So we, as Nupsaw, we will make sure that we end this exploitation, we end these neoliberal policies of the ANC. So we have, before the lockdown, we do have a joint structure, which is the CHWs and the EPWPs. They are working because there's no better enemy. I mean, there's no better slave. All of them are slaves. The EPWPs are the slaves of the government. The CHWs are the slaves of the government. So there's no better slaves. That's why they are working in solidarity to end the exploitation.
No, thanks very much, Solly. I think we can leave it there. Just by way of a concluding remark, It's clear that the pandemic and the lockdown and the economic consequences has completely transformed the terrain, the landscape of the class struggle. Issues of unemployment, of pay, are all going to become much more intense in the months and years ahead. And so I expect and I hope that this will be the first of many discussions that we'll have on the developments in the labour movement and the tactics and the strategies necessary to take forward an independent working class movement towards the goal of a socialist society. So thanks for participating today, Solly, and good luck to you and all the workers in the protests that lie ahead.
Thank you, Comrade John.